These days, gun ads would have you believe that the latest and greatest round is always the top dog, but out where your shot has to fight wind drift, where flinching ruins hits, and where consistency matters more than flash age means nothing. What counts is how the rifle and cartridge actually perform. This applies as much to the person pulling the trigger as it does to the round they're shooting. And the truth is, many of the calibers that figured all this out 50 or even 100 years ago have quietly been pushed aside. In this video, we're diving into 9 classic hunting calibers that still beat out many newer designs where it matters most: accuracy, trajectory, energy on target, and shooter confidence. These are the loads that once toppled moose in Scandinavian forests, dropped coyotes across the Great Plains, and took whitetails without all the noise or recoil of today's high-velocity cartridges. Some drift lazily downrange with soft recoil and laser-like precision. Others scream past 3,000 feet per second and punch clean holes like match-grade loads. But they've all got one thing in common: they still work better than most shooters remember. We're dusting off these overlooked gems. Time may have buried them, but seasoned marksmen never forgot. And once you see what they can do, neither will you. Number 1. 303 British. After World War veterans returned home, they brought their surplus Lee Enfield rifles with them, often chopped and restocked for the woods. That's how the 303 British went from battlefield staple to backwoods workhorse. Sporterized No. 4 rifles and short magazine Lee Enfields, pushing 150 grain soft points at close to 2,700 feet per second, or 174 grain round nose loads at just under 2,500, could consistently group under 1.5 inches, provided the two-piece stock was properly bedded. Recoil was gentle, a firm shove instead of a hard slap, making it easy to keep your sights steady and squeeze off clean shots. Inside 150 yards, a 174 grain soft point still hits with energy on par with a 30 caliber Springfield. And those lighter 150 grain loads fly flatter than many hunters expect. Reloaders using modern brass and powders like Varjay often get 1-inch groups from classic Parker Hale Sporters or BSA conversions, rifles you still see in Canadian pawn shops every fall. For black bear baiting setups, a 180 grain hot core at 2,450 feet per second punches through end to end without destroying meat. At woods distances, that moderate speed lets soft lead bullets expand just right while keeping their core together. Its rimmed case and roomy chamber don't allow for high pressures, so velocity never quite reaches 30 caliber Springfield levels, but inside 250 yards. A solid rest and a good sight picture matter more than raw speed. Even now, iron-sighted Enfields drop moose in Newfoundland every season. Local hunters love its quiet report and fast follow-up shots from that smooth cock-on close bolt throw. The 303 British may not look flashy, but its gentle recoil, trustworthy accuracy, and solid field record make it a hunting round worth holding on to. Number 2. 8mm Mauser 7.9 2 by 57 mm. Germany's powerhouse military cartridge from both world wars isn't measured in likes or views, it's measured in elk, wild boar, and red stag. Standard loads pushing a 198 grain Spitzer at over 2,600 feet per second deliver almost 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. Yet the myth about its recoil being brutal is just that, a myth. A full-length Carabiner 98 feels softer than many magnums and keeps groups tight if the rifle's properly tuned. Free-floated barrels and solid bedding turn old military rifles or modern sporters like the CZ550 into honest sub-minute shooters. Reloaders can easily push 150-grain ballistic tips past 2,900 feet per second without pressure spikes. The result? A flat shooting, hard-hitting deer load that zeroes at 250 yards and wrecks vitals with ease. Where the 8mm really shines is in the woods. Its heavy, high sectional density bullets bust through bone and brush without tumbling, and it holds velocity well out to 300 yards. In Europe, hunters still trust their old Breno VZ-24s and Yugo M48s for bore drives. The round feeds smoothly through Mauser actions and stays stable even after cutting through dense foliage. Back in the States, the 8mm fell into obscurity behind the .30 caliber Springfield. But when someone puts a re-barreled Car 98 on a bench and dings steel at 600 yards, people take notice. It's living proof that a balanced cartridge with reasonable pressure and plenty of rifle options can still compete with modern loads and often outshoot them. Number 3. 7mm Mauser 7 by 57mm. Paul Mauser's original 7mm design, first introduced in the late 19th century, remains one of the most balanced hunting cartridges ever made. It delivers low recoil, high accuracy, and surprisingly powerful downrange performance. Modern loads sending a 140-grain boat tail at around 2,800 feet per second rival today's 6.5mm speedsters, but with a little more weight and sectional density to punch through bone and muscle. Surplus Spanish 1893s can still shoot groups under 1.5 inches with iron sights. Convert one into a scoped sporter, or better yet, start with something like the Ruger No. 1 International, and it'll easily tighten up below an inch. Hunters love it for its forgiving recoil and reliable performance on game. African hunting history includes legends of Karamojo Bell taking elephants with 173 grain solids from a Rigby, chambered in .275, a British name for the 7mm Mauser. While that was extreme, the round is perfectly suited for elk, mule deer, or anything else within reasonable distance. A 150-grain partition launched at 2,700 feet per second stays above 1,800 at 300 yards, more than enough to put lungs or shoulders out of commission. Rifles like the CZ550 or any well-bedded Model 98 feed flawlessly thanks to the cartridge's gentle shoulder and optimal taper. Its efficient powder charge burns well in barrels from 22 to 24 inches. The 7x57 inspired many greats stretch it to .30 caliber, and you get the .30 caliber Springfield. Neck it down to 1/4 inch, and it becomes the beloved .257 Roberts. But even on its own, the 7mm Mauser deserves a spot in any serious hunter's collection. When a Chilean Mauser built over 100 years ago rings a 2-inch steel plate at 400 yards, even modern Magnum fans pause and smile. Number 4. 280 Remington. Back in 1957, Remington engineers decided to take the tried and true 30-06 and neck it down to 7mm. They nudged the shoulder forward just over 50 thousandths of an inch, accidentally producing one of the most balanced big game cartridges ever made, though their marketing department never quite figured out how to sell it. A 140-grain AccuBond sailing at a true 3,000 feet per second hits flatter than a .270 Winchester and handles wind more gracefully. Step it up to a 160-grain partition moving at 2,900 feet per second, and you get less drift than a similar weight from a 30-06, plus superior penetration thanks to better sectional density. Rifles like the Remington Model 700 Mountain or Browning's X-Bolt stainless often group under 3/4 of an inch with no fancy bedding required. Recoil? Think more like a .270, not a 7mm Remington Magnum. Its powder burning efficiency makes it easy on barrels. And you'll still hear steel ring at 700 yards with a basic duplex scope. Elk hunters using 150 grain Barnes TSX rounds clocking just under 3,000 feet per second have dropped bulls cleanly past 450 yards, turning skeptics into believers. So why did it fade? Remington's decision to first launch it in autoloaders, then rename it 7mm Express, confused the market just as the 7mm Remington Magnum was stealing the spotlight. These days, reloaders know better. 60 grains of medium, slow powder behind a bonded 150 grain bullet makes a truly versatile load. Whether it's a whitetail at 80 yards or a pronghorn at 400, this round delivers. The real strength of the 280 Remington is its sweet spot between shootability and reach. And every time a Nosler Model 48 turns out cloverleafs, that underdog reputation feels more like an oversight. Number 5. 6mm Remington. Introduced in 1955 under the name 244 Remington, this round was Remington's response to the red-hot 243 Winchester. Unfortunately, the original one in 12 twist barrels couldn't stabilize 100 grain bullets, which hurt its reputation among deer hunters. By the time they rebranded it 6mm Remington with a 1 in 9 twist in 1963, the damage was done. But performance-wise, this round still shines. A factory 100 grain soft point leaving the muzzle at 3,100 feet per second puts coyotes down at 500 yards, and a 105 grain Hornady Max handload offers an even flatter arc, thanks to its impressive half-point ballistic coefficient. With a 24-inch custom tube and a long magazine, you can push 85 grain partitions past 3,400 feet per second, making it deadly on light deer. Ruger 77s and Model 700 varmint rifles often group under half an inch when properly bedded. Recoil is softer than the 243, yet it retains more punch downrange, so quick follow-up shots come naturally. Varmint shooters love the extra throat length and free bore, which allows high speeds without overpressuring. And for big game, a 100 grain partition at 2,900 feet per second gets in, does its job, and exits cleanly, preserving meat. Coyotes hit with 75 grain VMAX rounds just fold. What sets this cartridge apart is its adaptability. From prairie dogs to whitetails, it gets it done all with one rifle and a bullet swap. Number 6. 264 Winchester Magnum. When Winchester launched the 264 Magnum in 1959, they marketed it with a screaming 140 grain Spitzer at 3,200 feet per second out of a 26-inch Model 70 Westerner. Long-range shooters were thrilled, but early barrel-wearing chrome moly bores gave it a bad reputation. Those concerns are long gone now. Today's cut-rifled stainless and hammer-forged 5R barrels handle the heat with ease. A 140 grain Berger VLD at 3,240 cuts through the wind, and rings steel at 1,000 yards with surgical precision. Load it lighter with a 120 grain Barnes TTSX moving at 3,300 feet per second, and you've got a pronghorn killer that feels more like a guided missile than a bullet. Custom rigs built around Ruger Hawkeyes or Defiance actions regularly turn in 3/8 minute of angle groups. Feeding is slick, and the beltless case burns powder clean. The recoil sits somewhere between a 6.5 Creedmoor and a 7mm Magnum. With this much velocity, holdover becomes almost unnecessary out to nearly 400 yards. Some still worry about barrel life, but practical testing shows modern barrels lasting past 1,200 rounds before any accuracy decline, which is more than enough for the average hunter. In Wyoming, elk guides swear by it. They've seen 130-grain AccuBonds zip through lungs at 540 yards and drop animals where they stand. Number 7. 257. Roberts. Start with a 7 by 57 millimeter case, neck it to quarter bore, and keep the pressure on the modest side. That's the 257 Roberts. Launching a 117-grain Sierra Pro Hunter at 3,000 feet per second keeps it above 2,000 feet per second, even out to 400 yards. Hand loaders working with Kimber Hunters or Winchester Model 70 featherweights often achieve sub-minute of angle performance. Recoil sits under 9 foot-pounds in a 7-pound rifle, gentle enough for a new shooter to stay in the glass and spot hits. It's more than just a mild-mannered deer round. The Roberts is capable of cleanly dropping pronghorn, axis deer, and cow elk, assuming you do your part. One of its secrets? Its head spaces off the shoulder, which means bullet jump stays consistent. Old school hunters still swear by it for coyote drives. A 100-grain partition behind the shoulder leaves clean holes, and its soft report means the next dog often stops to take a look. Ammo can be hard to find, but forming cases is easy, and it sips powder compared to magnums. While newer 6.5 cartridges dominate the conversation, the Roberts quietly delivers soft recoil, consistent cloverleafs, and a shooting experience that's just plain enjoyable. Number 8. 2506 Remington. This one's a speed freak. Take a 30-06 case and neck it to 25 caliber, and you end up with a cartridge that outruns most of the 6.5 crowd. A 110-grain Nosler AccuBond screaming at 3,085 feet per second gives you a 200-yard zero with minimal rise or drop between 100 and 300. Perfect for wide-open antelope country. Off-the-shelf Remington 700 ADLs routinely shoot half-minute groups with some tuning, and custom barrels bring that down even more. Despite its blazing speed, the recoil sits closer to a .243 Winchester, letting shooters spot impacts and stay on target. On tough hunts for black bear, a 115-grain partition at 3,000 feet per second wrecks shoulders and drops spines. On the varmint side, a 75-grain V-Max disintegrates prairie dogs at 350 yards. Past 600, wind starts to push it more than the higher BC 6.5 loads, but inside that, it carries more velocity and energy. Barrel life beats the 257 Weatherby handily, so practice sessions won't cost you a fortune. Whether it's a Browning X Bolt, Savage 110, or a Ruger M77, the 2506 shoots flat, hits hard, and remains a sheep hunter's dream for packing light and shooting long. Number 9. 6.5 by 55 Swedish Mauser. Born in the late 19th century and still punching above its weight, the Swede is a masterclass in cartridge harmony. Lower operating pressures keep barrel wear to a minimum, and brass stretches less, which handloaders love. Send a 140-grain Hornady LX downrange at 2,700 feet per second, and most factory Tikka-trees or sporterized M96 Mausers will stay inside half-minute of angle. Want more punch? Try a 155-grain Lapua Mega at 2560, and you're in moose killing territory, a reputation it earned over a century ago in the forests of Scandinavia. Recoil is barely noticeable, which builds shooter confidence and encourages good form. The long, sleek bullets feed smoothly thanks to the Swede's 8-degree shoulder and generous case taper. At 500 yards, retained energy still exceeds 1,600 foot-pounds, and wind drift compares favorably with the Creedmoor. From red stags on Highland Hills to elk in Idaho timber, the cartridge gets it done quietly and reliably. Whether you're shooting an elegant Sauer 100 or a beat-up Howa 1500. The Swede's long throat and smooth-feeding nature make it a natural for accuracy. Military match shooters still use it to ring steel at 1,000 yards with iron sights and surplus ammo that's older than they are. These 9 classic hunting rounds may not have the marketing hype of today's new releases, but out in the field, they continue to get the job done. If you've got one of these sleepers tucked away in your safe, maybe it's time to dust it off. Which forgotten calibers are you still shooting or thinking about trying this season? Drop a comment, share this with your hunting crew, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more old school ammo that still hits like a freight train.